Tony Pigford, what's up, bro?
Hey, brother Jeff.
Man, what did you think about that song, that message to Mayor Hancock from hip hop legends weighing in on, the critical issues of our time, and in this particular situation, our unhoused neighbors?
I loved it, brother Jeff. I agree. It's powerful. It was poignant. And I think that art, music, and hip hop in particular have always been at the core of social change and moving the needle towards justice. And so I'm glad to hear that song. And then to lay that just on top of the imagery from that homeless sweep that day is just moving. I mean, those images speak volumes themselves, but kudos to that crew for putting that together. Keep it coming.
Well, yes, indeed. Keep it coming. It's simply amazing the times that we are in. And Tony Pigford is in the building, in the free think zone. We've got so much that we've got to cover, so much that we've got to go over and catch up on. And I'll tell you this, I better hit you all with the trigger alert if you weren't already triggered just by the song and the footage, etc. I'm going to just go ahead and give you this disclaimer. This is a show that triggers people because you've entered a free think zone. If you're not willing to be exposed to other points of view, tune out now and don't read the comments. You have been warned. Tony Pigford, a native of the Mile High Income City of the state of Colorado, and has been very active in terms of business, civic life, political life, keeping his eye on everything that's happening. And I will tell you this, Tony Pigford, I just want to catch up with you and, touch bases. Like, there was this whole movement around we can do better. Are we doing better? Like, after that slogan and the millions that were spent in terms of the slogan of we can do better for our unhoused neighbors, and, the mayor led that charge with the Downtown Denver Partnership and others. My question is, are we doing better?
Before I answer that, brother Jeff, I just want to thank you again for having me on and for the work that you do. I appreciate you. And it's Colorado Gives Day, right? I think today, when folks can go to www.brotherjeff.com and kick you down some coins. So before I answer that question, I just want to appreciate your work and appreciate anybody who can give any amount. Please do. And especially if you can give recurring monthly donations, brotherjeff.com.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate you always doing that and making sure that this platform is available where we're able to, have candid conversations without fear of retribution by the big wigs, the big folks, the folks, they're very good. they're very good in this particular city, and I guess around the nation, and politically, people are very good at being very retribution. Like, if you don't say what we want to have said, we will not give you those biscuits and molasses, and you won't be invited to the big table.
Yeah, it's typically sort of a social ladder climbing, who's willing to ride whose coattails type of game. And I'm sure we can bring up plenty of instances today to talk about that retribution. But there's a lot of people who are fighting against it, unafraid to speak truth to power. And we're having a lot of success at the grassroots level. So I'm optimistic there. To answer your question in one word, Brother Jeff, are we doing better? No. I want to put a HE double hockey sticks in front of that. And forgive me if you hear my dogs barking. But the mass inequity in our city is just widening and widening. And it was bad before COVID, and COVID has just made the wealth gap and our mass inequity crisis and our housing crisis much, much worse. And we've got a city administration that doesn't respond with empathy or humanity. They respond with violence, and they violate people's human rights with these sweeps. And so we're doing worse and worse. I mean, we've got sweep after sweep where human beings, our homeless neighbors, are being treated without dignity and having their human rights violated. And it's heartbreaking and it's maddening.
Tony, there's a report that just came out from the Independent Monitor. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I saw some hints and clues to it. The great Candice Idabaka and Dr. Lisa Calderon have been on top of that. The Independent Monitor, Nicholas, he put out a report, and I understand that Chief Payson and Murphy Robinson, the manager of safety, have had a press conference or something to that effect. I didn't get a chance to see it as of yet. Have you had a chance to look into any of that or hear the press conference?
Yes, I did watch a portion of the press conference, and I have read a good amount of the report, which I could only describe, Brother Jeff, as scathing. I think that every Denver resident should be extremely concerned. I've been following what's been happening in our Denver Police Department for years, and so I wasn't surprised. But when you have actions described as reckless violence, lack of body camera footage, missing and vague documentation, they didn't have rosters of which police officers they sent out into the field. This is during the George Floyd social uprising. For 4 days, they didn't keep track of what officers were out on the streets for the first 4 days of their response to what was happening on the streets of Denver. And so I really liked Councilwoman Tabaka's statement about the Independent Monitor's devastating report, and that it basically affirms what tens of thousands of protesters already knew. We live in a city where officers can commit unprecedented human rights violations, turn off their body cameras, remove their name badges, fail to file reports, and not be held accountable. And so I encourage everybody to read the report. Chief Payson's response, basically, from my perspective, was that it was unprecedented. It happened so quickly, they did the best that they could. There hadn't been anything like this in a number of years, was something he said repeatedly. And then he was saying that he agreed with a lot of what the report said. When he was pressed with questions to ask, well, how are you going to hold specific officers accountable? He didn't really have any answer to that question, or not an answer that satisfied me anyway. And so,
well, I don't know if you can hold the system accountable without dismantling a system that is just rooted and rotten. And I think that, Chief Payson's, in my opinion, Chief Payson's a stand-up guy. And, I think that, what you have is a system that will refuse to change, and they're holding good leadership, in my opinion, accountable. I mean, passing the buck their way. Like, for example, I've seen it several times where, people believe that you could get a black or a brown or a woman chief of police officer, chief of police, and then all of a sudden something is going to change with the system. But the system has been around, the institution has been around, and as soon as Chief Payson shows up, or others, and this is my opinion, the parts of the system that is refusing to change, it doubles down and it goes to say, well, I'll show you and I'll show them that what you think is going to be different is not going to be different, and you'll be gone long before we'll be gone. And, of course, Chief Payson would say, yeah, we didn't do as well as we can. That's taking responsibility. But at the end of the day, there's a whole bunch of stuff that probably didn't get passed his way, a whole bunch of folks that were doing certain things. And, I'm just, it's just hard to look at a system and have people saying they have hopes and aspirations for a system to change that is just rooted in, if you got a rotten tree, if you got rotten seeds, you're going to get a rotten tree and you're going to get rotten fruits. And so what are your thoughts? I mean, are you surprised? Like, I haven't read the report, but I'm assuming the report says, you know what? The police misstepped their bounds. They didn't do what they said they needed to do. They didn't play by the rules, even though they're hired to keep the rules. And oh, by the way, what would be different if the head of the entire Mile High Income City doesn't play by the rules? Like, if he says one thing and does another, why would you expect anything below the head to be any different? Like this. Am I just making this up, Tony?
I wish you were, Brother Jeff. What you're describing is the current reality in Denver related to policing and city leadership. You're exactly right. The system is operating exactly as designed. It's been a violently racist system since the inception and creation of police from slave patrols. And so I think that you're exactly right, Brother Jeff. And then you're bringing up the issue of where does the buck stop? And ultimately the buck stops with the leader of the administration here in Denver, which is Mayor Hancock. And when we have a leader that is a do as I say, not as I do type of leader, then we're sort of stuck in a jam here. I think 2023 and the next election is our sort of last stand here in Denver to elect leaders that will govern from a place of moral conviction and not ruthless ambition. So,
man, what do you think? Like, I mean, isn't it disheartening when, like, say, for example, we get these slogans like "we can do better," and like the reason we're not going to treat these unhoused neighbors with dignity and respect is because we can do better. Like, the reason we're not going to do that is because we can do better, and they put it in a marketing package, and they got everybody walking around talking about we can do better, and they're doing marketing. But we can tell we're not doing better. In fact, let me go out on a limb and say, as it relates to our unhoused neighbors, we are doing absolutely worse. We're doing absolutely worse. There are going to be individuals that are going to be losing their lives as these cold days come. Some are already have lost lives. You're dealing with, intense despair in many regards. And to give these individuals a slogan, and everyone's trying to speak to the mayor who makes it illegal for you to have those types of hard times, is so disheartening. And then in the midst of the largest, a global pandemic where the slogan is we're all in this together, you have the mayor runs out a slogan again, a slogan that he can't even live up to. Like, he doesn't even believe what he's saying. And, there are people who do believe we can do better. There are people who do believe, that we're all in this together, but it's not the belief of the man at the top. How does that even happen? Is integrity in play in politics, or once you get to a certain level, the rules don't apply to you? How does this work, Tony?
I love your first question about how does that happen, because I try to be a root cause type of thinker and figure, well, how did we get in this predicament in the first place? And I think that what we have is a multiple election cycles where you've got a low information and non-participatory electorate majority combined with some really screwed up campaign finance laws. And that will lead to the type of leadership that is dominated by crony capitalism and so forth. And so I think that it's the combination of those two, a non-participatory and low information electorate. And even though a lot of people are happy with voter turnout, when you look at the numbers of eligible voters, the majority of people still don't vote. And then the majority of people that do vote don't necessarily have their head around a lot of the issues necessarily, understandably, for multiple reasons. It's hard, especially when the city uses that propaganda machine you're talking about and slogans and so forth to understand what's really going on. And so I think that's what's caused it, Brother Jeff. And I've meant to write down the second part of your question. But
well,
what was the?
My whole thing is, and I think that you really summed it up. I'm just thinking out loud on a lot of different things because, when you have the independent monitor saying that officers don't turn on their body cams, officers don't file reports, officers are, over a course of many days during the upheaval, the outcry and the outrage, there's a gap in reporting. These are the very individuals that are hired to keep the rules in check, and they break the rules. And I don't know
their own rules.
I don't know if it's different with the mayor. I mean, nobody ran on it. I don't know if he even ran on a campaign of integrity. You know what I mean? I don't know if at that level you say, I promise to be honest, but a police officer, I imagine they take an oath to uphold the law. They have life and death on their hip and all of these different things. Mayor Hancock, I just think maybe he's just like some of the worst of politicians that the world sees, that once I get in power, I'm really about the power. I'm really about the willing and the dealing. I'm not about the people. And maybe that's what's alluring for some individuals to get into some of these positions of, i.e. power. So I don't know. We elected the mayor. We didn't elect, these officers. Like the people didn't elect them. As a matter of fact, the mayor puts all of that stuff in place as well. So I don't know if you're going to start at the top. I don't know if that's something we're able to do with regards to this particular mayor.
Well, to me, it sort of reminds me of what we do as Americans until Trump is out of office. Unless something odd happens, Trump is going to be our president until January 20th. That's not going to change. We're going to have this administration until 2023. I was hoping that there might be a special election next year if Mayor Hancock got plucked by the Biden administration. But I think he probably ruined his chances of being able to do that with the latest decision to fly down to Mississippi for the holidays. So knowing that, we've got to really keep doing what we're doing and create mutual aid communities and band together neighbor by neighbor, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, and be sure that we're sticking together on a grassroots level and planning and organizing for the election in 2023. We've got to really just focus on that hyper-local type of community approach and stick together until we can get the type of leadership we ultimately deserve.
Well, I hope the mayor is listening to hip hop, because hip hop is spoken. And when the artists began to speak, and they have been speaking, and they're getting louder and louder, and the citizens are getting louder and louder. I think the mayor blatantly showing a disregard for his own directives has it's created a whole wave of, we don't want to hear what you have to say. And I'm just wondering, Tony, what really bothers me a lot around our unhoused neighbors is when people come to me and others and we're having these conversations in community about what do we need to do? And I'm like, what do we need to do? We don't make 6 figures and 7 figures and have big budgets and staffs and wake up every day and go to work and, say we're dealing with this unhoused neighbor situation. And then you want to whittle it down to Brother Jeff, what do we need to do about unhoused neighbors? I already know what to do. It ain't that hard. It's not that hard. One of the things that you do is, first of all, you don't make being unhoused illegal. Why don't you start? Why is that rocket science? If somebody has, fallen on hard times or substance abuse or mental illness or whatever that is there a way that we can deal with substance abuse and mental illness as substance abuse issues and mental health issues, and not saying it's a police issue? Why make it illegal for someone to be outside in the cold and put up a tent or have a sleeping bag or have lay on a coat or do all these different things? Why make that illegal? Don't ask me what we need to do. I can tell you what we don't need to do, and that is make our most vulnerable in society, criminalize it and codify it, and then make it possible for police to have interactions with said individuals, and then sweep them like they're trash, and then sweep them to nowhere and take their stuff, which is unconstitutional. Why are you asking me?
Yeah, it's appalling what's going on, Brother Jeff. It's unconstitutional. It's inhumane, and housing is a human right, I think, along with other things, a livable wage and a job, health care, access to good education, access to clean water, clean air. All of that are basic human rights. And unfortunately, we have a city administration that has a blatant disregard for those and is harming, and ultimately, in worst case scenarios, can damage people's lives forever. And in worst case, people will die. And so it's pretty awful what's happening.
Tony, what's really disheartening to me is that I listen to folks decry Trump and his behaviors, but on the other side, I see the exact same behaviors. You know what I mean? It's they're like, vote for me because I'm not Trump, but you're Trump. No, vote for me because I'm not that, but everything that's doing, you're doing the same thing. And what really catches my attention is that they would always say, as long as the economy is doing well, as long as the stock market is doing well, you can get reelected. And we don't care if we don't care if you're a cheater, if you're a liar, if you have, you taught me the word crony capitalism. We don't care if the Grand Hall is never going to be, completed. We don't care if $1 billion is going to be spent on that. We don't care if the right concrete is poured. You know, we don't care about that as long as the economy is doing well. And now I hear individuals talking about the Grand Hall. The design of that was to make it safer for travelers not to be picked off like in terrorist attacks. But now the same open space is just being removed in a different configuration, and you're still vulnerable. But as long as the stock market is all right, we're all right. So is it just about the money, Tony?
I mean, ultimately, I think it is, because when you think about people who disagree with Trump, but then, you know, sort of doing the same type of thing, ultimately it's corporate greed and the impact of capitalism that is controlling both sides. Ultimately, I mean, the stock market through COVID has gone nuts, brother Jeff. I mean, it dipped like around mid-March, but it has basically fully recovered, and a lot of people with means bought in during that dip. And so it is unfortunately all about the money, but we're going to learn the hard way, brother Jeff, because mass inequity and the trajectory we're on isn't sustainable on a number of levels, and it is going to impact all of us. And so unfortunately, corporate greed and crony capitalism has a stranglehold on politics at every level for now, but I don't think it's going to be that way ultimately for too long. And before I see Leanne Wheeler, hey Leanne, much love, Leanne. She asked a question. Good to see you as always. She brought up the option of a recall, brother Jeff, and recalling our elected officials. And if people thought that was a viable option, I think it's a tool that we should use. Unfortunately, it's going to get a lot harder to recall people moving forward because the voter turnout went up. And when you try and recall officials, at least in Denver, they go off, you have to get a certain percentage of signatures based off of how many people showed up at the last election. And so if you wanted to recall in an easier manner, the sooner you do it when voter turnout has been lower, the better. But I think that recalls should be an option. They're expensive, they're time consuming. But I think if they're well organized, it could be a useful tool.
You know, what's very interesting is I was watching the budget conversations at city council, and there was this big fight to deal with campaign finance reform as it relates to the vote, and making it more possible for ordinary people to get involved in the political arena without having to kiss the ring of, you know, the big dollars, the business partnerships, the 17th and 16th Street lawyers, and those that they pick, the city bosses. And as they were negotiating the budget, the mayor decided that, you know, all that work that was done to deal with that campaign finance issue, he was attacking that in the budget. He was like, well, if we go after something, why don't we go after what the people drove in to make it possible to level this playing field? How difficult is it to, i.e., fight the power or address these issues when the power looks like you, grew up with you, and knows how to do the wobble wobble just like you?
Yeah, extremely difficult. And they did decide not to take funding away from that campaign finance reform, brother Jeff. I'm glad they decided not to. But it was an option that was on the table. And the excuse was that with the COVID budget deficit, everything should be looked at as far as dollars. And so I think, speaking of that, that's one tool that I think is going to be a game changer, brother Jeff, because in 2023 in Denver, that campaign finance reform takes effect. And so it should draw more candidates from working class backgrounds, more candidates of color, and give them access to finances to run their campaigns. And so that's something we worked on and we passed as a citizen-led initiative a few years ago. And so that's one tool. That campaign finance reform is going to be a huge tool in Aurora City Council. Kudos to those city council members out in Aurora. They're looking at campaign finance reform at a municipal level. I think that's one tool that we can use to make a difference.
I see you got your Manual Thunderbolt sweater on. You've got your Thunderbolt sweater, that long history and that long tradition. I see you rocking the Thunderbolt sweater. The superintendent, Susana Cordova, has left for greener pastures. there's a interim superintendent that has come into place, a black man, a brother. You know him?
I have never met him, but I am aware that he's the interim superintendent for now.
Okay. Where is he from? Gerald, hand me that
Gosh.
paper. Hand me that paper. Anybody out there know the new superintendent, at least the interim superintendent for DPS? Looks like a fine gentleman. His name is Dwight Jones. Dwight Jones. He is currently the DPS senior deputy superintendent of equity. Now, if you think about that Bailey report and you think about all the things that the report mentions in terms of what should be done around equity, you haven't met Dwight. You haven't met the senior deputy superintendent?
I haven't, and I've heard a little bit about his past work and so forth. I mean, I'm glad that we do have a black man in that position for now. Don't get me wrong there. I am thankful for that, and that is significant. I have heard that he had some influence in creating SB 191. Speaking of the Bailey report, that had an impact on the Bailey report. And then I think he was in another district in Las Vegas as well. But I think that with Superintendent Cordova's departure, it's a huge opportunity for us as a community to get more engaged in Denver Public Schools and see what we can do. Because as you know, Brother Jeff, it too has a long history of injustice in Denver Public Schools that we've got to try and find a way to change.
I want to hang out with Dwight Jones, and I'm sorry,
Have him on the show.
Dwight. I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to reach out to you. Maybe because I know DPS is insular. Like once you get inside the capsule, everything happens in the bubble. Maybe I got to get inside the bubble to hang out with Dwight Jones because I am just a stone's throw away from the mothership known as DPS that's co-housed inside of Emily Griffin after they sold the building on Grant Street and probably used some of that bond money to get inside of a building, which is actually a school, which gives you an excuse to say, well, we're actually building and improving Emily Griffin, but we'll sell that real estate and we'll pop the administration on top of Emily Griffin because those who want an opportunity want to look at the big wigs in the same building as all, maybe they look up to them. So Dwight, shout out to you, interim superintendent. Love to meet you. Not necessarily because you're black, because I don't do black politics anymore. I don't do any of that identity stuff. I just my chest is not out. I'm not proud because, there's a black this or a black that, because like I said at the beginning of the show, these systems don't change because you're a black superintendent. They don't change because you're a black police chief. They don't change because you're a black mayor. As a matter of fact, sometimes people get put in positions to keep that stuff in place, to keep it rolling so we can be lullabied straight to sleep. But I find it kind of odd that I want to meet. I want to hang out with Dwight. I bet he's a great guy. And the black part is probably the icing on the cake. I got some more questions I got to ask. And by the way, it is they call it Colorado Gives Day, and you all give to Brother Jeff's Cultural Center. You give all the time, and we thank you. Go to brotherjeff.com, make a donation of any amount. Today, you'll see me take my CMOS straight to the head again. My CMOS straight to the head. I'm not promoting CMOS. I'm just taking CMOS and I'm learning what it is. Brotherjeff.com. Don't forget about Chubby Curls. Educating the natural community one scalp at a time. You've got those little skinny curls, make them chubby. I want to talk a little bit about Park Hill Golf Course. Tony, are you ready to talk about the Park Hill Golf Course? Because I'm going to ask you my fundamental question, and I ask everybody my fundamental question. Tony Pigford, are you ready for my fundamental question for the Park Hill Golf Course?
I'm a huge fan of yours, Brother Jeff. I think I know what your fundamental question might be, so I'll be disappointed in myself if I'm not prepared for this fundamental question. So go ahead, shoot.
Okay. I have spent upwards to $2 million in an investment in Park Hill Golf Course in the form of a conservation easement. I just want to know what my return on investment is or what my participation is as it relates to the development or the future of that land. And as I understand it, I have a conservation easement into perpetuity, which was put together by the Honorable Wellington E. Webb at a period of time when the city wasn't able to purchase the actual land, but they purchased their stake in what could happen with any development as it relates to that land. My fundamental question to you, Tony, is what do I get for my $2 million? My $2 million. Because my friend Kenneth told me that I just get a tee time on a golf course. That's it.
I would beg to differ with his response to that. I think that the answer to your question, Brother Jeff, is stay tuned. It's to be determined what you will get. I think if the developer, Westside, and the mayor's administration have their druthers, you'll get another Metro Tax District funded smaller version of Lowry that just creates more gentrification and damage to our environment. That's one option. I think that if you keep doing what you're doing and getting the facts out there, we have a tremendous opportunity to make that $2 million that taxpayers spent for a perpetual conservation easement into something really amazing for our community, our city, and the region. So my answer to the question is stay tuned, Brother Jeff. It's going to be a long fight.
It's going to be a long fight. Okay, so Tony, let me ask you this question. And I've had a chance, and I'm going to continue talking to all of the principals that are attached to and community members that are looking at this kind of open space argument. Like me personally, Brother Jeff, I don't want another concrete canyon. I don't want another, opportunity for another 30, 40, 50,000 people to be lumped on top of each other and smashed into place to get the most maximization of profit out of land and zoning that now has attracted developers, which means a developer knows they can't build, anything 1 or 2 stories on a piece of property. But if you make my zoning allow me to make it a zillion stories high, then I don't need much land. I just need a lot of height. It's like, how high can you go? Like, can I block out the Rocky Mountains? Yes. Can I block out the natural beauty of yes. Can I do all those different things? And so, I think I have a say in what will happen there as part of my investment. I think I have a say. Is that true, Tony?
Yeah, well, what I love about your question, Brother Jeff, is it's the first question that needs to be asked. The city is moving forward with a wasteful and misleading city scamming process about development that assumes any development, when the question is, can this land even be developed in the first place legally because of the conservation easement that you, me, and a bunch of other taxpayers paid for, that is perpetual, which means forever. And so that's where the conversation needs to start. And ultimately, I think it is going to have to go through the court system to determine that, because there should be no small area plan. There should be no conversation about how high you build. We've got a perpetual conservation easement in place. And we also have a state statute that backs up that conservation easement that says basically, unless it's virtually impossible to preserve that conservation easement, you can't remove it. And so any other conversation beyond that is wasteful, ridiculous, and a moot point. Like, we need to figure out the legalities behind that conservation easement, because Wellington Webb had a lot of foresight when he worked to get that easement on there, because he knew that eventually there could be mayoral administrations that would let developers run rampant and build wherever they want. And let's preserve whatever piece of land we might be able to hang on to. And so that's where we are today, unfortunately.
Well, I have great confidence in, Ken and, Norman and Wayne and Ty. They were able to, in fact, Norman and Wayne and Ty, they were able to become a part of the principles in terms of ownership equity. They have an equity stake in that. And that gives me great hope and great promise because, I trust and believe in all of those individuals. But what really concerns me is if Hancock has a say about any of this. And I don't know what his say is because he has absolutely zero credibility. He and the up and coming, perhaps future mayor or wannabe Albus Brooks, the ones that, Albus came to community and convinced us that we needed to tear down 100-year-old trees to prepare for a 100-year coming flood in City Park Golf Course to make a Tupperware bowl to actually catch water, which was really just attached to getting money for the I-70 expansion program. And they ran that game, and it's the same type of lack of integrity that, his mentor, and I would consider Mayor Hancock Albus Brooks' mentor, because there was a time when you were his mentor. You two were, and he ran real close as fast as he could away from you to Mayor Hancock, and his behavior began to mirror Hancock's immediately. And, and that comes with saying one thing and doing another, a total lack of integrity. I'm going to do you a favor, Brother Jeff, and I'm going to tear down these 100-year-old trees, which some mayors maybe back in the day planted trees to give to the future, some open space, some parks, some, kind of amenities that would make a city beautiful. Albus decided to get behind tearing down that promise to the future to take money, temporary money from Washington, D.C. for a highway to go through some of the most challenged neighborhoods, Elyria, Globeville, and Swansea. And he sold us that. And it was at that point I just totally got out the car. I'm like, bro, I like you as a human being, but you are a politician that cannot be trusted. You're about this money and you're about yourself as it relates to that money. And the money has a new cadre of those individuals in the pipeline to run for that 2023 position, et cetera. What can we do? Because if Hancock's attached to that park discussion in Park Hill, no one's going to believe anything about that process at all. It's a liability. It's just like he stepped into the discussion of DPS with Pena, and he wrote a letter about Susana Cordova being treated with racism and sexism when she said, I'm leaving, I had a great time and a wonderful working relationship with everybody. I just got a better job in Dallas. What's the politics of this, Tony?
I think we've got to start planning now, Brother Jeff. Yesterday, for the 2023 election, there's actually DPS school board elections. I think that as an electorate, we've got an opportunity to make change. I mean, as far as city politics, we should be thinking now, whose seat is open? Whose seat do we have to protect? What incumbents are vulnerable? What mayor are we going to run who's going to represent us from a place of moral conviction and not the ruthless ambition that we see so often happen? And so I know that there are some leaders in the city that are having conversations about 2023, but I think that that's what we need to do. We need to be proactive. And one thing that I was thinking about, Brother Jeff, when you talked about City Park Golf Course and tearing down the trees, that really got my blood boiling is, anytime taxes are raised in Denver, it's supposed to be a vote of the people. But what they did in that case is they raised everybody's stormwater fees to raise the money. So it was like a workaround. It was a tax disguised as a fee to raise that money. During a time when a lot of elders in our community can't afford stormwater fee increases to pay for, that project. And so I think there's a lot we can do, and we've made some great advances, Brother Jeff. We got campaign finance reform passed. We prevented the Olympics planning from coming. I think about that, like if citizens like you and me hadn't stepped up and said, hell no to the Olympics, the Hancock administration and his corporate cronies would have been gearing up to plan for the Olympics right before COVID.
Wow.
And we didn't get a thank you or anything. I didn't get a thank you from the mayor's administration for saving him the egg on the face and all of his corporate colleagues for that. We've got some new people elected on city council. We've got people term limited on city council. Both at-large seats are open. I believe Councilman Herndon's seat is open. The mayor's seat is open. But I think we also have to watch out for shifts that are going to occur from the Biden administration, and what could happen if different puzzle pieces get moved around. So I'm naively optimistic that we can make a change, but we only have a short window here.
Well, I'm with you. I think we can make. I believe this city can be beautiful for everyone, not just the haves. But I believe that there are, and I'm talking about, folks in the middle can't even afford to be here anymore. I'm not, folks who are turning their nose up and walking past folks that are unhoused. They are just as close to being unhoused as those that are unhoused right now, directly because of, this hyper rise in cost of living to just be here. But back to this golf course, I'm really thinking about, and Orrin makes a good point, and I want to just ask this question to you, Tony. How does providing opportunity for the Northeast Park Hill area and its residents damage the environment? Like, is that what you're saying, or is that, or is let me just read Orrin's question to you one more time, and you just take it from here. How does providing opportunity for Northeast Park Hill area and its residents damage the environment?
Well, I'm not quite sure what opportunity Orrin thinks is going to be provided there at the Park Hill Golf Course. Nothing has been put in writing. Nothing is set in stone. There have just been what I think are going to be false promises. And when I think about Park Hill Golf Course turning into a smaller version of Lowry, I don't see a lot of opportunity there for anybody unless you have, like you were just saying, Brother Jeff, money to afford the cost of living there. What is coming at the developer's discretion is a diverse mix of housing with maybe some things the community might suggest mixed in. And so my question to Orrin would be, well, what opportunity is he referring to that is coming?
Well, he's got to Orrin, I'm not messing, like I don't mess my program. My pronoun name is my pronoun game is tight. Like, so I'm gonna just say Orrin they, because I don't know he or she or they, but Orrin asks also, why conserve an open space that sits unused to date, and if it were used, would be a golf course up the street from a golf course?
Well, that's the lie that the developer and the people that the developer has hired to perpetuate this lie. That's just a lie. It doesn't always have to be a golf course. There's language in the conservation easement that says the city and the owner of the golf course, if they agree, it could be something totally different as long as it falls within the range of conservation purposes. And so that's just propaganda and a myth. It doesn't, if the conservation easement is protected, it does not have to stay a golf course. If we had a city administration that was a bit different, they would work with an owner of the property or have a different owner who would say, hey, let's do something completely different, from urban farming to outdoor education to recreational ball fields, or something that's in the language of the conservation easement, all sorts of things that could benefit youth, elders, all of that. It does not have to be a golf course. That's just simply not true.
But when I was talking to Norm and Ken and Ty and Wayne, and exactly what you said sounds a lot like what they envision. Like all of that. Like all of that can happen. They say it's such a vast piece of land, and their thinking seems to be in line with exactly what you just said as it relates to the use of space. And I think Orrin seems to be pointing a little bit in that direction. I think, and I'd have to go back and revisit the conversation. What Kenneth told me, I believe, was, as it stands, the only thing it can be is a golf course. Like the only thing, And that's why Brother Jeff only has a tee time. I only got a tee time because the only thing it can be is a golf course based on how things are, written in that easement right now. But all of the things that you're talking about sounds like what everybody seems to believe would be, a great opportunity and a great use of space.
Well, I think a good part of what will happen there, and you have to look at the current property owner, Westside Investment Partners, you have to look at what they do. And we have an example of Loretta Heights. They just went through a planning process with Loretta Heights. They're going to implement Metro TAC districts. It's going to drive up the cost of housing because they're going to bring in a diverse mix of housing and increase inequity and gentrification. And so you could bring in one market or mid-market rate home, just one, Brother Jeff, to that property, and it's going to impact everything around it. And we're talking potentially thousands of units. And so I think that's what people really need to think about with what's happening there is that is automatically going to cause more gentrification, tax increase, and damage to the environment.
But do you think that, like for example, as it relates to home ownership, and I'm just thinking out loud, you know what I mean, and watching how all these pieces move. Like if there's improvement of the particular area and it raises up property values, and those who are around, their property values raises as well. And you think about home ownership as a means to, entering, I don't know, the middle class. Wouldn't it be a good thing, like, for that to take place, particularly if you take it a little further upstream and say there should be livable wages, there should be employment opportunities or business opportunities that drive up, take home pay, like, are we saying that if you're down here, you got to always stay down here, and as this rises up, you still stay down here? Or is there a way to have a system to where if there's a rise, folks are making more money, they're having better jobs, the educational system is preparing folks to enter into a marketplace that has marketable skills that they can teach, work, and be employed in their community, own their houses, and participate in, the equity rising as being a part of it, as opposed to being attacked by it?
Yeah, I think it's possible, but we have to have the political will, and we haven't had that. I like Sandy Robnett's comment on here about the golf course, saying all of the things can be accomplished by reusing and repurposing all the surrounding available developed land. Open space can never be replaced. Once it's gone, it's gone. And we're always given the false choice of, as a community, it's like, well, you can have workforce housing and X, Y, and Z, or open space. Like we can have both. And to go into the Park Hill Golf Course and develop it, you've got to do the sewer and all the infrastructure there. We need to look at not a small area plan for just 155 acres. Let's look at a bigger scope of planning and think about the 40th Colorado light rail station. And let's look and see. It'd be interesting, Brother Jeff. And I know you know him, Andy Feinstein from Exto Development.
Yeah, Andy's a good friend of mine.
He owns the Prodigy Coffee location. I don't know if you knew that, and then has something in the lease there with them that when he's ready to develop it, they've got to go. But we need to look at land like that and hold the city and other people accountable and develop every bit of underused and land around there before we go and tear up open space. That should be the last option.
Well, I can tell you, just looking at these comments, Erica is wondering, like I mentioned the black men who have got equity and ownership in terms of this project. Erica's looking for, where's the women voice? Where's the women involvement in this particular project? Have you heard about anything as it relates to women having a voice, ownership, or participation in this particular endeavor?
I haven't, and don't get me wrong, Brother Jeff and all the viewers out there, I'm all for Black economic empowerment for men, women, our future children generations. But I haven't heard of any women involved in that partnership. And I'm concerned that there could be a small handful of folks who could, cut their teeth and do well as developers. But ultimately, what it'll mean for the greater community and for the city will be, more gentrification and equity. And so, but I haven't seen any Black women at the forefront or in leadership positions in this.
Let me ask, Tony, because you and I are the same. We've been around. We're invested in community. We've come up here. We've walked and played in these streets and loved. I mean, we're home. So I want to ask the question to you, like I asked about myself. Do you believe you have a say in this, and particularly a equity say based on your $2 million? Like, you and I are talking about something that we have a stake in. Like, do you see it that way, or is it just tea time?
I definitely feel like I have a say, and every Denver resident has a say in what our city is shaped to look like. And we can achieve equity in a city that you started to describe, Brother Jeff, where working class folks have an opportunity for home ownership and upward mobility. We can do all that. Taxpayer money has been spent on a perpetual conservation easement, period. There can be no development. Denver taxpayers have a say in that. And what we're going to keep moving forward with is a citizen-led ballot initiative, Brother Jeff. And so we'll start collecting signatures like we intended to do before COVID next year and get it on the ballot during the school board election in November, and let Denver voters decide whether conservation easements or parkland should be developed. We have a say, we the people, for sure. The government works for us, not the other way around.
But that's the part that I'm struggling with, Tony. Help me work it through. Should Denver voters have a voice in if the conservation easement should be developed? Now I want to put a placeholder right there before I go back to another point that you made that I think is very important, that every Denver resident should have a voice in this, not just because you live in certain proximity to the actual space. I'm of the belief that if you live in the furthest fringe of Denver, you have an investment because that $2 million was just as much as came out of just as much as your pocket. Now, if they would have said, Brother Jeff lives in, Park Hill, close to the golf course, so I have to pay $3, and the ones over here don't have to pay anything. This is kind of like a neighborhood association conversation based on proximity. I would go for that. But when you say every Denver resident should have a voice, I believe every single Denver resident has a voice in this because they made the investment. Now, does that mean, their elected representative through the city council should be able to kind of distinguish what that means, or a citizen kind of the process, whether it be through citizen leadership or elected leadership or whatever, the process is the process, but the actual intent of we have a say in this is we have a say in this, all of us.
I think so. And the conservation easement was perpetual, Brother Jeff. It doesn't say in the language that each mayor's administration can evaluate the easement and go to the community and decide at that time, what's going to happen. That was the intent of the easement. And I think that it's a slippery slope, because what could happen, and we've got to keep an eye on this because we pass all sorts of bond packages. I mean, we passed the GO bond package for $1.7 billion, and voters voted for that. We've got to be sure that money is spent on the intended purposes, or else you could have politicians and corporate cronies come in and try and do what they're doing and disregard the initial intent of where dollars are supposed to be spent.
Chelsea says this should be decided by the residents and homeowners of Park Hill, like residents / homeowners of Park Hill. What do you think about that? Like, is there a disconnect? Like, I'm thinking through this stuff, and I'm saying that if everyone who ponied up $2 million has a say, I don't know if it should just be the residents of Park Hill who have a say, because if it's open space, I want an open space that can be used by folks who pass through the city, live in the city, work in the city, play in the city. I don't want to see a toll gate like that. They ask for ID when you go through that particular area. I'm like, when I think of open space, I'd like to, like, be in a place where, you can wander in the city park. You can sit under a tree. You don't have to be pushed out because you don't have a permit, or I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we saw during COVID how much more open space was used, even Park Hill Golf Course, when people felt cooped up. And unfortunately, that disproportionately impacts communities of color and our poor who don't have the means to go to Vail or Aspen or one of those resorts and just want some peace and quiet and outdoor space. A lot of our seniors have said, what do you want most during this COVID trauma you're experiencing? They said, I want to go sit outside on a bench and watch the wind blow and the birds fly and feel the breeze. And it's invaluable. And once it's gone, it's gone. To Chelsea's point, it's interesting. One, I think we've got to realize we're all connected. What happens in Loretta Heights affects City Park West. What happens in Park Hill Golf Course is going to affect what's happening over on Federal. We're all in this together. And I encourage everybody in Park Hill to get involved and have a voice, because I think if we left it just up to people in Park Hill and they had the facts, they wouldn't want to see West Side come in and make another small miniature Lowry that caused more gentrification and voluntary displacement. So I welcome the folks of Park Hill increasing their voice. And the last thing I'll say to her point is Councilwoman Sita Baca gave Kenneth Ho from West Side Investment Partners sort of an offer and said, all right, let's draw a boundary of just the residents around Park Hill Golf Course. Let's engage them. And if 51% of them vote to go with your development plan, then I won't oppose it at all. And he just didn't really respond and wasn't quite sure what to say.
Oh, wait a minute. See, I didn't hear about that. Like there was an offer made.
It was when we were trying to get the charter change, and Councilwoman Sita Baca was helping us direct file that, and then it got sent back to committee. She offered to drop the direct file of that charter change if Kenneth Ho and West Side would agree to drawing a boundary and letting community members decide. I welcome it too. If you want to have a grassroots campaign where we go and educate folks about what's really happened, I don't think you're going to find many people in Park Hill around the golf course who will say, I want more gentrification, I want more traffic, I want more mass inequity, and I want dirtier air to breathe.
I've seen Norman, particularly Norman Harris. They've been doing some community outreach and visioning and talking and pulling folks in together to kind of get what they like the residents. I mean, I've seen some outreach and some conversation and some talking, but at the beginning of our conversation, I think you're saying that even before that happens, you need to have an understanding of what you can do with this easement situation. Like, you can spend all of that energy doing all of that, but the first thing first is Brother Jeff's investment. Is that what you're saying?
I think there's a lot of reasonable people in Denver and around in the golf course who will say, well, we've got to follow a process here. And why are we talking about developing a piece of land that has a perpetual conservation easement? There's a process to remove the easement. City council is involved. There's a state statute that will be involved. And I think that reasonable people understand that and will want that process, understand that needs to be followed. And so the danger, Brother Jeff, is West Side Investment Partners and the city of Denver have millions of dollars literally to run a PR and propaganda campaign, including and doing events and things that will help the community in the short term while they get the easement removed. And long term, it just provides more involuntary displacement. And it's a tricky line for community because community's hurting, especially the Black community, especially through COVID. We were hurting before. And so if there are corporations or folks who want to help our community, we need to accept the help, but we can't do that at a cost that long term could damage our community. And it's not at all a model about self-empowerment.
Well, I could tell you the politics of this, when just thinking of the politics, like I said, if Hancock and his administration are attached to this, you already know that it lacks integrity. So, like, it just lacks integrity. I mean, I believe that he thought that he could push something through with a political fix, and you had you had some folks watching this time. It was like, hold up a second. hold up a second. And, when you had the big guy, Mayor Wellington E. Webb, standing out there with the protesters, a lot of people don't realize that Mayor Wellington E. Webb has stood with protesters as a politician and out of office. Like, he has stood 10 toes deep for whatever, to his credit. When he came out, that's a black man who was talking to another black man, because he's talking to an administration. He's talking to Hancock, who at some point was his mentee, I would imagine. That that appointment came out of the Urban League. We know what the Urban League was set up for. And the big guy, Wellington E. Webb, was talking to Hancock in terms of the rights of citizens, and he was speaking as a citizen. And so when you get Hancock mixed up, I'm telling everybody, when you get Hancock mixed up in any of your dealings, the average person with common sense is going to see that he represents downtown Denver. He represents the lawyers, the bankers, the developers, and all of those different individuals, and it ain't going to be a good look. And this city has always had a history of bringing out black folks or brown folks or gay folks or women folks to look like the audience that they're talking to say, this is what we want to hear from you, while they knowing they've already inked the deal a long time before they went to community. We got hip to that a long time ago. It's just in this situation, folks stopped it before it was going to move further. Tony, do you just not trust West Side the way I don't trust Mayor Hancock? Like, do you? Because you mentioned Loretta Heights. Like, if this was any other organization, like, say, for example, if this was, another organization that you hold in high regard that has a long history of, keeping its promises and doing what it says it's going to do, et cetera, would you have the same, like, angst, or is it like West Side, Loretta Heights, Hancock, I'm on high alert? Is this a trust issue?
Yeah, well, I think that me as an individual or any company or organization or school I represent, we're going to be judged off of our track record. And we're going to say, this is what you have done up to this point. This is the commitment, like you say, Brother Jeff, that you've kept or haven't kept. And West Side Development does not have a history of bringing Black economic development to anywhere, or equity in housing, or treating the environment with care. They have a track record of trying to improve their bottom line and not caring much about anything else. Just like to your point about the mayor's administration and the trust, the mayor has a history of doing things that would make people not think that he has integrity or is about transparency. And so I followed a lot of the money, Brother Jeff. I mean, you always talk about follow the money.
Follow the money.
And during the during the last mayor's election cycle, the amount of money that was dumped in, especially during the runoff, and we're talking in a matter of weeks, was obscene.
And he almost lost. Like, Mayor Hancock did not get in that seat by a vote of confidence of voters. When he got reelected, the money was like, whoo, we skirted this one. And I think they're looking for somebody to replace him. They just know that we're not going to go for that same, like, Hancock-esque game plan, which is, if it looks like you, we'll put money behind it, and they'll know how to do the wobble and do the best, charge it to my heart and not my head, kind of like, the Negro shuffle conversation that we get so enamored with. You've got on the Manual jersey, this is the man who shut down and helped him with participating in shutting down Manual. And then, you got the alumni of Manual that said that they would ask the Hancock for contributions as an alumni, and he ain't ponied up a dime for the school. Then you talk about Urban League that helped launch him into the mayor's position, and the Urban League is closed down. I guarantee you, if you went to go find the Urban League, if there's one organization that should be thriving in the Mile High Income City, it should be the organization that launched the third term mayor, and you can't find the Urban League in the daylight with a flashlight. And so I think what you're saying is, and if the mayor has something to do with Park Hill Golf Course, I guarantee you it ain't going to come out for the benefit of ordinary individuals of Park Hill. They're going to be talking about what the hell happened to this open space. This is very much gone. Harry has answered several questions, and I want to find them before we get out of here, because if you see any questions that you want to take before we get out of here, I'd love for you to address them. Jason McBride. Jason is another guy. These are great. Jason, these are folks of great integrity. He says we can have open space and everything this community needs on 155 acres. West Side is willing to compromise. Mr. Pigford doesn't seem like he is. Like, if this was between West Side and Tony Pigford, if we was just to say these are the two principals, is there room to have a conversation? Because it sounds like y'all are saying the same thing, except the process is what's in question. And my question is, what does Brother Jeff get for $2 million? Mine is just straight up. Perpetual means perpetual. Like DPS has a perpetual racist structure. The police department is perpetual in its systemic oppression of black folks. I know what perpetual means, except all of a sudden when it comes down to an easement, I don't know what perpetual means.
Yeah, first of all, I have a lot of respect for Jason's work and admire his leadership and the work that he's done, especially with youth. So thank you, Jason. And I need to do a better job of supporting you in that, and I appreciate it. But yeah, it is about process. Let's figure out the conservation easement. We've got to figure out, okay, how many city council members are going to need to vote to remove the easement. Then we've got community engagement and all of that stuff. It's a process. Could there be some development on that land that ends up in some way truly benefiting the community with West Side at the helm? I'm skeptical, Brother Jeff, and the whole audience out there, based off of their track record. And so we need to first figure out if this small area plan, if Denver tax dollars should even be spent on this small area. And excuse me, it's not a small area planning process. It's a small area scamming process.
Are you saying it's kind of like that process they rolled out that said what we thought about tearing down those 100-year-old trees in City Park golf course? That process?
Yes. Let's not have another small area scamming process when we've got a conservation easement to determine. Let's figure that out first, and let's tell the truth, and let's ground things in facts, especially knowing that it doesn't always have to be a golf course if the easement is kept. And one thing I want to say to all those listening is we have asked the city attorney multiple times, because we've been told by the city attorney that there's a clear legal path to removing the conservation easement. We have asked in writing, I think at least 3 times, what do you mean? What is the clear legal path? And we've gotten nothing but radio silence. And that, to me, Brother Jeff, lacks transparency, integrity, and is a bad sign for sure.
Wait a minute. Who does the city attorney work for? Like, I keep going back to this also. I thought I was the city. Like, I'm Tony. I'm so strange. Like when you said a city attorney, I thought Brother Jeff was the city. I thought the city attorney worked for me. I guarantee you the city attorney's paycheck damn sure comes out of my pocket. Like, but who does the city attorney work for? Like you're just trying to get some information from the city attorney, which I imagine works for you. For somehow they set up a city as a kind of a monument on a hill that it's an entity in and of itself that has nothing to do with us. Like, why can't you get some information from the city attorney who says we have a clear path to get rid of the easement? Like
we've got an administration that lacks transparency, integrity, and then citizens have to scratch and claw and fight to get information and file expensive Cora requests. It's a shame, Brother Jeff. The Denver residents deserve better. We can do better. And we just need to be sure that we get different leaders in place. I completely agree. I shouldn't have to ask 3, 4, 5 times for basic information and what something means from people who I pay to employ through my tax dollars.
Huh. Well, it's always great hanging out with you. It's great talking with you. I'm going to keep talking about this because I think it's a very important issue. I've got $2 million, and although I don't deal with interests, if I did, that $2 million in this economy should be worth a lot more. But then when COVID hit, maybe it's worth a lot less. I have no idea.
Well, and now, Brother Jeff, that easement you pay for, last I checked, I haven't driven by there in a while, but the golf course is fenced off. You can't even golf there right now. Try setting up a tee time, Brother Jeff, if you wanted to. You can't golf there. It's fenced off. So right now you're getting the opposite of interest.
But we've got to remember, Tony, that golf course is private property. Like, they purchased the property. I just own what can happen on that property.
You own the development rights, Brother Jeff. You and everybody else in the city of Denver owns those development rights. Period.
So we're at a stalemate. Like, we're at a stalemate.
Let's figure that out before we have any conversations about, what a developer who has greased the wheels of our political leaders wants to do to that property.
Hey, I got a question for you, Tony. Well, I've had a lot of questions, and I've been very much enlightened. Next, I'm going to get some attorneys to just talk about this. Some dispassionate attorneys that could just say, you know what, on face value, take out the politics. Here's what this says. Here's what an easement is. Here's what perpetuity is. Because the city attorney can say whatever, and a good attorney can tell its client, I can win that. Like, I can win that. This city attorney is just playing with house money. Now, I wonder if it's 155 acres. Is that about 100? How big is this thing? It's big, right?
It's the last untouched open space we have in the city of Denver. It's big.
How much do you think you have to pay on taxes every year on that much land? Like, if it's some commercial property, my commercial property taxes is higher than giraffe genitals. So with with that kind of land sitting steady, you got to have some long money to not get something going. Like, how long are you going to sit on some property? This needs to get moving.
Yeah, well, they've been given 3 years, and there was a settlement agreement back in November 2019, and this was set up then, where West Side. Well, first, the city we paid West Side $6 million in the settlement, more taxpayer dollars going that direction, and gave West Side 3 years to try and sell its development plans to the community. And so when I say it's going to be a long haul, it is. And surprisingly, it coincides with the end of the lame duck administration, Mayor Hancock's third term. It's weird how that works.
The mayor's like, I tried to do what I could for you, dog. I tried, but the people don't believe me. So but Tony, I really believe that a fenced off area, man, you think you could get some affordable housing on there? You think you could get some market rate, some affordable? You think you could get some You think you could go for some subsidized housing over there? Like like the mayor grew up in the projects and then sold the projects to private developers. That was subsidized housing. Do you think that there's a place for subsidized housing in the fastest gentrifying city in the nation? Like, is there a place for subsidized housing? I know folks are talking about a grocery store, but I'm talking about subsidized housing. And don't tell me affordable. I don't want to hear that term. Subsidized housing.
Yeah, we need to start with no income housing. We talk about the need for low income housing. We need no income housing. We need to house our homeless community. There is so much room for subsidized, no income, extremely low income housing. It's a crisis, Brother Jeff, and we need leaders that will put resources that way and not subsidize luxury developers to build luxury condos. We could house our homeless today based off of empty units in our city. And so there's plenty of room for doing things differently. We've just got to stick together and be sure that we're engaged and elect leaders that will govern for the common good and out of moral conviction and not the ruthless ambition that we've been used to out of our city administration.
Wow, powerful conversation, Tony Pigford. Bruce Gibson says, these developers make me puke. They've ruined my hometown.
I hear him. The quality of life has gone down, Brother Jeff. Like, my mom was a teacher, my dad was a small business owner, and somehow they found a way to afford housing. find me a teacher and someone starting a small business who can afford to buy a home in the city of Denver.
Man, I heard someone say that back in the day, a teacher's salary, one teacher's salary in the household was enough to make you a homeowner. One teacher's salary. Those days are long gone. The police can't live here. The fire people can't live here. The teachers can't live here. Everybody has to come into the colony and kiss the ring and pay a $50 parking ticket that will turn to $100 and mail that ticket to Texas to be processed.
It's crazy where we've gotten, Brother Jeff. Mile high income city, but we have an opportunity to turn it around. We just got to stick together and be proactive as a community. I know we can do it. We've got the only thing that's been missing is the political will. We've got the social capital and all the different resources. Well, we just need the political will.
This particular portion of land, or whatever the last piece of land is, it's a great opportunity. Like Chelsea says, 155 acres can provide for open space, much needed affordable grocery store right in the neighborhood. Like, that space could be whatever the community wants and needs. Like it can be, and it doesn't have to be. And like, a lot of this stuff that I'm seeing is investment properties for people who don't even live here. Like, this is nothing more than a colony. These folks live other places, and then you send your remittance to other places that they don't spend any time here. They just figured out it was a great investment, and you've got folks who have been here can no longer afford to be here. It's like somebody walked into the building and robbed everybody and said, "Everybody get on the ground and don't nothing move but the money." It's like yeah. Don't nothing move but the money. Don't nothing move but the money. So yeah. They come to get the bag and they go. But I think there's a process. I think people will be engaged. You and others have put some light, which is disinfectant, in these dark spaces, in an administration that has been far away from truth, facts, transparency, and all of those different things that we teach our children, but rarely have the moral fortitude to live up to. And hopefully we're going to get to a place where integrity is a part of society once again. Don't bemoan Donald Trump when you doing the exact same things, because politics is just politics, and we give it a pass in the name of politics. If the people own the property, not the property, but if the people have a say, let the people have a say, and listen to what they say. And I guarantee you, at the end of the day, it might be something that everybody wants.
Well said, Brother Jeff. I couldn't have said it much better at all, man. Well said.
Well, Tony, thanks so much. Everybody, appreciate you all. Landry said, and shut down my bellow too. Live in my bellow, shut that joint down. And then made political commercials driving his son out of the neighborhood to go to school. I'm like, that. I told you I was gonna rob you, not with my mouth, but with my actions. So some of this is on you. Like, some of this is on you.
Yeah. It's been a trip.
Okay. All right, let me see before we get out. How can I contribute to Brother Jeff's Cultural Center on Colorado Gives Day? Yeah, a lot of folks have attempted to go to Brother Jeff's Cultural Center on Colorado Gives Day, but let me tell you how you can contribute to Brother Jeff's Cultural Center. You can go to Brother Jeff's Cultural Center at www.brotherjeff.com, and there's a donate button. You could be a patron, or the great Leanne Wheeler's favorite option, that Cash App. That's $JFFFARD. Those are the options. Tony, you want me to tell you why I'm going to let you know why I'm not loaded up on Colorado's Gives Day.
Why? What's going on?
The reason I'm not on Colorado Gives Day is because on Colorado Gives Day, that's the day that I give to organizations that I really support, that are doing a lot of great work. And I don't want to be in the competition with all of that. You know what I mean? There are a lot of great organizations that are doing a lot of great things. you free thinkers, you all take care of me all the time, every day, you know, in every kind of different way. And yes, that's another opportunity for me to attract more giving. But that's a day when I'm going to give to certain organizations that, you know, I like to give to. So if this is the day you'd like to give to Brother Jeff's Cultural Center, we would appreciate it. But we'll be here tomorrow. We'll be here the next day. We appreciate all that you give. Tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we will be having Chef Chop, a black chef, preparing fresh food for the community. We don't sell it; just come pick it up. It's because of your donations. We haven't cut any hours. We've paid all of the musicians and artists that we've always paid in the past, and that's because of your great contributions. We have the pantry. We do all of those different things, and I, like you, Tony, I don't know, you don't talk about all the ways that you give also, but I also have a donor advised fund through the Denver Foundation. It's called the Brother Jeff Community Fund. So if you're like, you want to do like that kind of thing where, you know, for those of you who know about donor advised funds, I have a donor advised fund at the Denver Foundation where we give to different organizations. And what I like, Tony, about the donor advised fund is that the Denver Foundation does all the back end work for me. You know what I mean? And I just kind of have a pot, like, you know, finances there that allow me to do like I do on Colorado Gives Day and pick out certain organizations, and they process it. They do all the different things. That's the Denver Foundation. And you're a part of that kind of giving as well through, you know, there's a black philanthropist kind of organization. You want to say something about that before you get out of here?
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you for bringing up donor advised funds. I think it's important for Black folks, especially, to be involved in philanthropy from a grassroots level to an institutional level. I mean, the root meaning of philanthropy means love of humankind. And so we're all philanthropists. Typically, Black folks give a higher percentage of what they earn to philanthropy. And so I'm a member of Denver African American Philanthropists. It's the only or the first Black male men's giving circle west of the Mississippi. We, like you, Brother Jeff, house our funds at the Denver Foundation and the Donor Advised Fund. My family also has a fund to set up manual students at the Denver Foundation. That's a Donor Advised Fund. What's great about it, there is the back end and technical support. The money is invested, and you can choose to invest it in socially conscious companies, so you're not going counter to your philanthropic desires. But it's a great way to set up a vehicle to expand philanthropy. And so the Denver Foundation does a great job, and I encourage folks to look into the donor advised funds. And there's a lot of people out there who have run around Denver who have donor advised funds that can cut checks from those accounts. And so it's important that community organizations know they exist.
You know, one day, Tony, I'll do a show where we just talk about the giving and the different ways that folks can give, et cetera. You know, with the stimulus checks, those $1,200 checks, I raised like $53,000 in like 5 hours of individuals who wanted to pull their stimulus checks. And guess what? The reason I didn't take that money is because the first thing I did, Tony, I said, don't give me any money until I talk to legal representation, so that there can be some transparency, there can be some systems, there can be some accountability and all of that stuff. I don't want you like, you know, let's set this thing up. And the more I talk to the attorneys, I'm like, I'd have had to set up a company. I would have had to be a registered investor, and I had to do all those different things. And I'm like, that's why I use the Denver Foundation, because I don't want to do all of those different things. And so I don't want to set up a business to figure out what we're going to do with all of them. So I'm like, you know what? Money, when you start talking about money, it can be very difficult.
Well, it can, and especially I think we need to do a better job in the Black community too about talking about money and generational wealth, because there's some data that suggests, Brother Jeff, by 2052, the average net worth of a Black person in America will be zero.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed. And so we've got to get a lot better about that. But the Donor Advised Fund is a great vehicle, and we can give our time, talent, treasure, and testimony. Black folks in particular come from a long lineage and legacy of making something out of nothing and using the community philanthropic model. And so let's keep doing it.
Well, I can tell you development, Harry says development in open park space and a few square miles around 40th in Colorado, not just 155 acres owned by an opportunistic developer. There's a lot. This is a large conversation. This open space it's a big conversation and it's a big deal. And I don't want people to miss the opportunity to participate in this conversation and have a say, because there's so much that has been developed that the ordinary people did not have a say in, and now they're showing back up in their community, or they're just seeing things happening around them, and they didn't have folks going to bat for them to make sure that they were being staved off by those who would take their equity and robo-sign different foreclosure situations via the clerk and recorder's office. You don't just change a neighborhood by one individual. It's a whole system in place to make what we see happen. And unfortunately, there are people who look just like you and I that participate wholeheartedly in the stick up.
Unfortunately, it's true. All skin folk ain't kin folk, and identity politics only goes so far. Before I go, Brother Jeff, I wanted to be sure to mention Save Open Space Denver's website, sosdenver.net. For those in the community that want information about the Park Hill Golf Course, there's more than you probably would want on there, sosdenver.net.
Well, you're getting the call out, folks. Folks are, like Barb says, they're hoping you run for city council again. There's a call out. Here's a call out, Tony. There's a call out, and there's some finances that didn't get touched that will give you a better fighting chance in terms of the raising of money. And you got all of that learning that you went through the last time. I think that just think about it.
I appreciate that, Barb, and thanks. I'm listening to those words, Brother Jeff. We were very fortunate to get 35,525 votes in our first attempt. So we'll see. I just want to be, a cog in the wheel and help put my hand on the boulder and push it uphill with everybody else and have my talents be put to their best use. And so we'll see what happens.
Well, thanks everybody that has donated to brotherjeff.com or Patreon or Cash App. A big shout out to each and every one of you. If you go ahead and announce, I'll go ahead and endorse right now. I'm staying on my same. Listen, Tony, I'm staying on my same team. I'll be Tony Pigford. I'm still on team Dr. Lisa Calderon until she says different.
There were a lot of great candidates, and I appreciate your support in our first run, Brother Jeff. I was honored to run alongside, Lisa and Candy and all sorts of other great candidates. And even like myself, some of those who didn't win, we had victories in other ways and achieved certain goals. And so we'll see. 2023 is Denver's last stand, Brother Jeff. If we don't get it done in 2023, I think the train might be too far left from the station. So get engaged, people. Get engaged.
I like what you said. 2023 is the last stand. Wow. 2023 can be the last stand. Wow, this is going to be exciting. Okay, let me go over here to say thank you to. I can go right here to the Cash App, and I can look right here and say thank you to always the great Leanne Wheeler and everybody. Robert Burns, thank you so much. D. Jane Smith, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate you all. All right, Tony, any last words? And again, I appreciate you. Leave with your vision for the Park Hill Golf Course. What say you?
My vision for the Park Hill Golf Course would ultimately be something that really benefits the community, and the community should definitely have a say in what that looks like post figuring out what happens with the conservation easement. I'm reluctant to kind of interject, what I think it should look like, Brother Jeff, other than really encouraging community members to get involved in that visioning process. I will say I don't want it to look like another Lowry. I don't want any more gentrification. I don't want the environment torn up. I don't want Black folks and working class folks to not be able to afford to live in the city anymore. So as far as Park Hill Golf Course, if there's anything that's done that leads down that road, I'm against it. And I'll leave everybody with just wishing for everybody's safety. Please wear a mask, social distance. Do what you can to prevent the spread of COVID. It's going to be a rough, bumpy 2, 3, maybe 4 months. I think it might be spring until we get through this. And this has really ravaged Black and brown communities and poor communities. And so stick together, y'all, and please do what you can. Reach out if you need help as well. But I want to wish everybody a happy holiday season, even though it's challenging. But I know we can get through this, and there's better days ahead.
All right. Jesse Parrish said he's running for mayor in 2023. I hear you. Run Jesse Parrish. Jesse. Like, I know one thing. If Jesse Parrish run, you definitely going to get black. you definitely gonna have someone that's gonna swing for the little people. So I think.
Can I tell you a quick story, Brother Jeff? We were at a church in Lowry during the campaign, and it's interesting to run for public office, especially as a Black candidate in Denver. And I'm forgetting the name of the church in Lowry. It's right by the grocery store. And there were a few debates that night. So the at-large debate was happening. And I'm sitting on stage with Jesse and looking out, and it's just a all packed full of white faces, Brother Jeff. And I had been scurrying around campaigning. I think I was late. And just the feeling, and Jesse can tell you, I sat down late, a little disheveled, didn't have my notebook, left it in the car. And I looked and I was like, of all the people that I could turn to my left and get any support or help from, who's sitting next to me but another Black man, Jesse, who gave me a piece of paper, and I think he might have even gave me a pen. And we did our thing that evening. And so it's an interesting experience. I hope we can use what we learned to be sure that we help candidates in 2023, especially very, very qualified candidates of color.
Absolutely. A lot of folks are bringing up this discussion about a grocery store. Oren says a lot of folks been shopping at 14th and Cameria for years. Northeast Denver has been a working class community for years, so we had cars to get to 14th and Cameria, et cetera. You know what? That space is so large, I think you could put 30 or 40 or 50 grocery stores over there. Like, I believe that I believe there's a grocery store coming. There's a grocery store coming, and some say there's a grocery store already on Colorado Boulevard down on that end. There's an Asian-owned grocery store down there. The grocery store. Yeah, I believe a grocery store is coming.
Well, I think we've got to think radically different about how we source our food, Brother Jeff. I mean, what we could see is a grocery store coming that could be a Sprouts or a Whole Foods plopped in the middle of another Lowry. I don't think that's what a lot of people want. We have an opportunity to think about urban farming completely differently. With our environmental crisis on everybody's doorstep, we need to start expanding the growth of our local food. I mean, good gracious. How big of an urban farm could we have there? How big of a farmer's market could we have there? Outdoor amphitheater. I mean,
how great of a city could we have if we weren't colonized? This city is owned by those outside of the city. And why can't we just build a city that's for the people who live here and also participate with those who don't live here? But once you're in a colony, colony leads to the Boston Tea Party. It leads to revolts. At some point, people get tired of being raised incrementally to where they can't even survive. And I know how you boil a frog. I might not tell you how to boil a frog, but I know how a frog is boiled and dies with a smile on its face. And if you don't know that information right now, then you might be getting boiled.
Yeah. We're reaching a boiling or a tipping point to your analogy, Brother Jeff. We're getting there where it's becoming unsustainable, and we've got to think about doing many, many things differently.
All right, you all. Appreciate your time, Tony. We got to come back and have more of these conversations, and we'll stay and we'll keep everybody posted on the Park Hill Golf Course. This conversation of open space and more land, less concrete. Like, I mean, how much concrete you want? Like, you want some more concrete? I'm not saying we don't need more, but dang, can we dang, can we like get a tree? Like, can we get a tree? Like, just give me a tree. Some shade. I bet you a tree is more beneficial to the human than a block of concrete.
Yeah, and there's plenty of places that have already been paved over, underutilized property that already have sewage and electricity, Brother Jeff, that we need to focus on. Let's zoom out of Park Hill Golf Course and let's build all around it. I think about Central Park in New York, and some people think it's a silly analogy, but they imagine New York City without Central Park.
Man, I can't. Hey, man, don't you remember when you was a child? They took you out and had you plant a tree and you named it. Like, we did stuff like that when we was a kid in Park Hill. This is your tree, and you go take care of it. I didn't know they was going to cut it down.
Oh, they cut down 150 or so in City Park Golf Course, mature trees, Brother Jeff.
Hey, the funny thing about that the City Park Golf Course, they said it was protecting you from 100-year flood that was coming, and then Hickenlooper ran campaign ads that said he saved us from the 100-year floods that came, and now when it rains, around City Park, you already got to wade through the water to get across York. You'd have put all that money to build that ditch, and when it rains, you got to wade across Highway 26 and Highway York Street. So
imagine a flood after the I-70 expansion is done and it's gone 40 feet below grade, Brother Jeff. Imagine water getting down there, or worse, an explosion, toxic materials, and you're going to dig underground 40 feet below and then cap it. It's another cycle of environmental racism, that I-70 expansion. And the City Park Golf Course drainage wasn't done to protect residents from a 100-year flood. It was to protect the I-70 expansion and the stock show redevelopment.
Wow. And it was done under the guise of us. Look like us, quack like us, even wobbled like us. But there was a axe that came into the forest, and one of the trees peeped out the handle and said, "Hey, he's one of us."